Good morning from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. It's the 26th of April 2025, 10:56 a.m. Saturday. I feel drawn to continue reading Ghost Stations 2, and it's a glorious day outside. The sun's out, there's still lots of cloud, but there's bright, jolly sunshine behind the clouds and a beautiful light shining upon the drab grey homes of my draconian neighbourhood, but hopefully they'll snap out of that one day and colour up their lives again. Yay! I'll probably be dead by then though, because by the time their paintwork wears off it'll be another 10-15 years, to put up with that for potentially another 10-15 years. So I'll just look at the trees and the leaves like I used to do with Elsa and think happy thoughts, shall we? Right, anyway. Chapter 14, An Encounter of the Third Kind. In July 1959, Brandon White and his school chum, Alan Hinson, decided they would have a touring holiday on a tandem. They were both keen on aircraft and planned a plane spotting tour to take in Cheviston, Alconbury, Wyton, Bedford, Thurley, Wittering and Upwood. Wittering sounds cute, like twittering. They set off from Lutterworth, riding a tandem loaded down with camping equipment, and arrived at Chelveston Airfield in Northamptonshire for their first stop. The two lads looked over the airfield for a suitable campsite to set up their tent for the night. They soon found a suitable meadow at the north end of the airfield. Chelveston Airfield opened as a bomber station in August 1941, but the following year the Americans took over the airfield and it became home for B-17 bombers. The American bombers took part in many daylight raids, suffering their biggest losses in a raid against Schweinfurt in Germany. It's a very strange name for a town. Schwein means pig and Fort means town, pig town. Oh well. Let's find out where in Germany, can't even pronounce it now, Schweinfurt actually is. I've never heard of it, but that's okay. I haven't heard about lots of things. I'm going to do that stupid I'm little robot thing for the love of all the gods. Oh, it looks quite charming. It's got a nice little river. Aha. Is a city in the district of Lower Franconia in Bavaria, Germany, so the south of Germany. It is the administrative centre of the surrounding district of Schweinfurt and a major industrial, cultural and education hub. Is there still an army base in Schweinfurt? Nearly 7 decades of US Army presence. Right, okay. Just wanted to know roughly where it was. So it's in the south of Germany. Which is kind of interesting because my mother told me she was sent to Bavaria to the south because there was less bombings. That was considered safer for her to be sent down there to be put in charge at the age of 15, mind you, of civilian orphans in this big old, I think it had at one time had been a hotel of some kind. But anyway, so they were still bombing in the south of Germany. So, I mean, she's not lying. I guess she just meant that there were less bombings. The Hamburg that was absolutely smashed. Right, anyway, where were we? When I had an interview with my rabbi, my former rabbi, Rabbi Uri Tamal, and I took my mother along. It was at the time back in, well, it had gone on since 1989 to 1991, where I was falsely accused of being a Nazi in my Jewish community here in Brisbane. An absolute outrage. But I actually took my mother along to that meeting, and Rabbi Tamal, looked at my mother and said, "I'm very happy to actually get to meet you." Didn't think I'd bring her along. The Tanya, even as a young woman, could be a bit audacious and courageous, quite frankly. I thought, he needs to see this person, that my mother, that we've been accused, including my baby children, by the way, being accused of being Nazis. It was absolutely evil and insane. Anyway, he took one look at my mother. We sat down. He immediately started speaking to my mother in German, which I was a bit astonished because I had thought he was Israeli, but he was actually German, hidden in an apartment building directly across from Hitler's headquarters. Can you imagine? Hidden in a tiny room with his mother, starving they were. At the end of the war, he was sent as a 7-year-old to Switzerland for being renourished. Spent 2 years in Switzerland being health restored to him and nourished him and his mother. So anyway, he takes one look at my mother, starts speaking to her in German, and I was a bit floored. I hadn't realised he was a survivor of the Holocaust too and had been kept hidden. That's how they survived, he and his mother. And anyway, he said to my mother, "Where are you from?" She said, "Hamburg." He said, "Hamburg was the worst possible city to be living in during the war with all the bombings." She said, "Yes. How did you know that?" He said, "Oh, I heard about it. We even heard about it in Berlin, how bad it was." Of course, the war crime of that phosphor bomb was what made it so much worse to do that against civilians. Anyway, he, to my great astonishment and my mother's great astonishment, he pulled out quite a few maps of wartime Germany, Hamburg specifically, and they were of the saturation bombings, showing quite clearly where all the targets were. And even my mother was looking in amazement, because it's one thing to live through it, but it's another thing to read it as a historical document laid out in front of you. She even said to me, she said, I was actually quite shocked to see how it was specifically targeted that way. Although she kind of knew, but it's just having it. Anyway, he took one look at my mother and he said to her, "How did you survive the bombings in Hamburg?" She said, "Well," she said, "it was touch and go a few times. I had twin friends that died in air raid shelters, and My half-sister died in an air raid shelter too. She said it was very, very precarious and dangerous, but she said I was sent to Bavaria to look after orphan children, and probably, she said, that's what saved me. She said, out of a class of 30 children in my school, in my class of 30, only 3 children survived. So I'm not saying this to aggrandize in any way the Nazis or the Germans. I'm just saying that was her experience and that it was kind of miraculous that she survived. And Rabbi Ori Tamal nodded. He said, I completely understand how difficult it must have been, and, the food shortages and the constant terror. And he said we lived like that under slightly different circumstances because we were even more starving, hidden as Jews across from Hitler's headquarters. I could have fallen off the chair. I was so astonished. And what a wonderful man to go and to fight for me and my daughters and even my mother, who was a survivor of that regime and was involved in the wartime ignominy via the Badismädchen. That's what sent her down to the south of Germany. So you could, on a technicality, say my mother was actually a Nazi. But she was merely a victim of a regime, being raised at that age. My mother was born in 1927, so when the war started in 1939, she was 12 years old. She was a child at the mercy of a machinery of hate and monstrosity that still has echoes to this day in our current worldview and our current globalist attitudes to population control. Not a lot has changed. It's just slightly more contemporaneous, modernized death cults. Just chilling and terrifying to think that that entire war was fought and the Nazis lost, and yet somehow nothing changed. And I have a fair idea. Rabbi Tamal had a fairly good grasp of that too back in 1991. Although those were more prosperous years, more hedonistic years, more years spent in denial really. But 2025, the Tanya no longer lives in denial. She's witnessing it all around her on a daily basis. And it's terrifying, people of Earth. Utterly, chillingly terrifying. But anyway, Rabbi Ori Tamal, he interviewed my mother in German, then interviewed me. He was satisfied that we were not actually Nazis and supported me as best as he could, called in a special general meeting with the board of the temple at that time. What were they called back in the day? They've changed their names quite a few times over the years. Temple Shalom, I think. Anyway, and he thought, being a powerful man of very high repute, at the time he worked for the Bureau of Ethnic Affairs, and his job was to actually coordinate with all kinds of, multicultural communities across Queensland, kind of like an ambassador in a way, although we jokingly used to refer to him as the Big Mac because he was the director of multicultural affairs, was put into this very strange position of having to defend a Jewish convert with a German mother against a Nazi libel. Very odd situation. And even though we called the special general meeting and I had to speak out about, defend my honour and my mother's honour and protect my children's honour, I still was not believed by some members of the community, and they continued to slander and vilify me, probably up until the current time, although I removed myself from that community about 6 or 7 years ago now. Anyway, it is what it is. It's just sort of twists of fate, how you come into contact with people who fight for you and defend you and get you because they came from a similar background of trauma and abuse and evil. Same but different. It's a bit confronting at times. Anyway, wherever you are, Rabbi Uri Tamar, you'll be disappointed to hear that I let Judaism pretty much slip away from me like a mantle, but I still have my talit, I still have my sidurim, I still have my Torah. It's all here. I haven't completely thrown it all out and rejected it, and I'm still a Jew in my heart and soul, and in a weird way. And that's where it counts, what's in your heart, and the rest is just, what did Hillel say? Be good to each other, and all the rest is commentary. Words to that effect. The Torah can be learned on one leg. So do good and all the rest is commentary. Was it Hillel or Shammai that had that philosophy? There were two disparate attitudes. Anyway, you see, I'm starting to forget. I used to know all that verbatim. People are there, the verbatim. Anyway, let me continue with story. How did we get into that segue? I'm not even sure. We were at Schweinfurt in Germany. Ah yes, Bavaria. How my mother came to be in Bavaria, which saved her life actually. And had her life not been saved, I might have been born to a different mother and had a better life, but there is that. But anyway, although she was a fairly terrible, bloody mother and got worse as she aged, we still should never have been slandered and maligned as Nazis. That's just had nothing to do with how my mother was with me and my daughters. It's a separate issue actually, and should never have been conflated and twisted by evil people in our community. But that's what people do, isn't it? It's human nature. They find your wound and they dig into it. So well, the nature of psychopaths, but let me put it that way, because not everyone digs into your wounds. Some people hold you in great regard and respect and treat you with honour and build you up rather than tear you down. It is what it is, people of Earth. Right, let me continue reading the story. The 305th Bomb Group from Chelveston lost 13 aircraft on that raid. It had been a heavy price to pay. Some badly shot up B-17s made it back only to crash attempting to land. After the war, the airfield was handed back to the Royal Air Force. Then in the early 1950s, the United States Air Force took over and laid a new runway for the 3,914th Air Base Group for American B-47 bombers. For Brandon White and his chum Alan Hinson, Chelveston was an excellent choice as to where to start their plane spotting holiday. But it was to be one that they would never forget, as Brandon explains. At the north end of the airfield, 6 silver RB-66 aircraft sat parked along dispersals, glittering in the evening sunshine. We pitched our tent in a field close to the airplanes, hoping that come morning we'd see them in action. Pardon me. I don't know why. I have Weet-Bix for breakfast. It just repeats on me. I don't know why. Is it the gluten or... I don't normally eat gluten-free. I'm going to have to stop eating Weet-Bix for breakfast. It just makes me feel a bit yuck. I've only been eating it for about 3 weeks, and 3 weeks I've been like, what? Anyway, and I'll finally come to that gnosis. I will finish off the small packet I've bought and not buy it for a while and see if my reflux settles back down. After our trusty Primus stove had given us both food and drink, we were preparing to turn in for the night when an old man approached us, asking what we were up to. We told him of our plans to tour the airfields we had in mind, and that we were both members of the Royal Observer Corps, and how aircraft recognition was important. Oh, that's interesting. Was important to ROC members. He eventually left us after repeating several times, "I wouldn't camp here if I were you." Some time later, as the twilight was giving way to darkness, we heard the unmistakable sound of an American patrol-engined heavy truck arriving in the farm track bordering our chosen field. The lane was a dead end, and the truck turned round and stopped at the gateway to our field about 50 yards away. An American dressed in fatigues climbed out of the truck wearing the round-type baseball cap and was looking at us and our tent. We expected to be ordered off the field, but instead of reprimanding us, the serviceman lit a large fire and began bellowing, "Ho, ho, ho," in a way designed to cause alarm. The fire, we surmised, must have been caused by petrol, as the hedgerow began crackling. At this time, the driver of the truck could clearly be seen waving his arms and still shouting, "Ho, ho," in a manner country folk use to shepherd or herd cattle. Then, as suddenly as it began, the fire died out. The driver climbed back into the truck, which was the canvas back type, and drove away, so our tent stayed in place. Brandon and his pal, Alan, were very bewildered. All was quiet. They were too tired to up tent and find a new site, so they decided to stay, but sleep with one eye open. They eventually turned in for the night, and the rest of the night passed uneventfully. The next morning, they were both up early, and, after a quick look over the RB-66s, they packed up their gear and headed to the other side of the airfield. They left the meadow by the same gate that they had entered, discussing the warning that they had received the night before, and they both looked along the hedgerow of the lane for traces of the fire that they had both so clearly seen. But there was no sign of having been any fire. Their hearts beat faster. The grass and the hedge where the fire had been was as green and normal as it should be, said Brandon. There was no sign of burning. Brandon and Alan continued on their plane spotting tour, and thankfully the rest of their holiday was without encounters of the third kind. What had they witnessed that summer evening in 1959? As the years passed, it slipped from the mind of Brandon White, until one evening in 1984. He had attended a film show at Grafton Underwood Village Hall, and during the evening he overheard a conversation that brought it all flooding back, as Brandon recalls. I overheard conversation from the seats behind about the strange goings-on at Chelveston Airfield concerning an American ambulance that roams the airfield at night, and the antics of people trying to see the vehicle. He sat unable to believe his ears, and he relived again that summer night in 1959 when he and his friend Alan Hinson witnessed an encounter of the third kind, which usually you describe that encounters of the third kind usually is to describe encounters with alien visitations either. Encounters with aliens, seeing craft. I think of there's a fourth and a fifth kind where you make direct contact. But anyway, it's unusual that he describes that in response to ghosts or phantoms, but it's not incorrect. It's just a bit unusual. Still wrapping my head around it a bit. I'm trying to work out why one of my dance videos, not the one I did last night, it's too early, but the one I did 6 days ago is going viral. I call my videos going viral when there's more than 40 or 50 views, because I only have very few subscribers, and I would think only a very small audience here on YouTube. So it's blowing my mind a bit. I don't understand it. But that particular video of me dancing is now currently up to 188 views, and it's like, why? I can't even dance, people of Earth. Just doing my stomping, moshing, defiant, tribal, wild expression of my own freedom and rebellion and defiance. So some people out there in YouTube land, on the internet, obviously enjoy it because quite a few views. So anyway, I don't understand what it is you're seeing, people of Earth, but thank you for your support. I appreciate it. It's very kind. It's very kind of those of you who've chosen to subscribe as well. Boosts my numbers up a little bit. I'm currently at 131 subscribers, which is astonishing because I had some subscribe and some unsubscribe, and look, honestly, it doesn't bother me one way or the other because I do this as much for my own enjoyment as to present my truth and read paranormal stories or do my wild dance and my own creative expression. And but it's lovely to see that people are supporting me by subscribing. Is what I'm trying to say. I don't ever ask for subscribers because it's a very personal, very emotional journey for me at times, and often quite painful. So I don't expect people to want to align or align with that level of trauma processing. But I guess some of you who watch my videos are also trauma survivors, so you kind of get it, and you support me by subscribing, and I value your humanness and respect and, yeah, alignment. So gratitude to you all. Chapter 15, Phantom Aircraft. In the early 1980s, at the height of the steel crisis, Rick Appleyard, spelt R-I-K, was out for his usual Sunday cycle ride. But this Sunday, it was going to be a Sunday to remember. He set out from his home in Laceby Road, Scunthorpe in Lincolnshire, and headed for the outskirts of the town, out to the Ferry Road, Warren Road, Normanby Road Junction. That's interesting, we've got a Normanby Road Junction here in Brisbane too, which leads to Burton on Stather. There's a hotel on the corner of that junction, the Normanby Hotel. Not that I've ever been in there for some reason, I've never gone in there, but I've only lived in the city for almost 37 years on the 1st of August, so kind of just thinking of it, I've never been there. Probably lots of places I still haven't been in this fabulous but at times toxic city with its toxic ley lines and the river that floods and destroys people's homes and livelihoods with fairly monotonous regularity, and the strange post-COVIDian culture we find ourselves living in now. 37 years. It's a long time, isn't it? Survived a lot of awfulness in the city, and sometimes I wonder if I should have migrated somewhere else for better luck or better anything, but sometimes nothing changes, so I decided to sit it out Anyway, where was I going to go without money and a home of my own? Kind of been trapped here, if truth be known. So that's why I get very angry about people being savage now, because my back's against the wall, got nowhere else to go, no other options. So I'll come out fighting like a pussycat. And well, I've been at war in one way or another since birth. Part of my Aries spirit, so there is that too. That's why I just want shalom, peace for my old age, and why I've retreated to my little old home here, doing my dance at home now. Safer that way. Right, where was I? Sunday is always a quiet day at Scunthorpe, except for the traffic at shift changes at the steelworks, but that was now at a standstill, and with the Appleby Frodingham works only ticking over, it was very quiet with very little traffic. It was just getting dusk, said Rick, and the Met conditions were very queer, to say the least. Imagine a leaden sky with no defined ceiling except to the north-northwest, where some form of sunset pulled the sky into whirls and streaks like some vast airborne whirlpool. This was a focus point to which the eye was drawn, combined with a strange silence that seemed to pervade everything. I felt as if I was riding into a painted picture. This is the only way the atmosphere of the moment can be described. Coming up to the junction, the traffic lights came to red, and as I stopped, I suddenly had this feeling, call it fear, uneasiness, what you may. It's some sixth sense told me something was about to happen. It did. Coming into my ears was the sound of a twin-engined German bomber. That sound is never forgotten from wartime experience. I scanned the line of flight which my old training said the aircraft was taking. Not a thing. No navigation lights which should have been visible. Nothing. The volume of noise indicated it was very low and visible, but then it suddenly cut out. So just it's a trick of my glasses pointing. I thought my eye looked a bit strange. I'm on day 3 of the off-brand Viagra. I'm feeling a bit lightheaded actually. One of the side effects is nausea. I don't have nausea, but I'm a bit refluxy and lightheaded. So just bear with me, people of Earth, as I move in and out of ordinary reality, which is not ordinary at all, but under the influence of a drug. I don't like taking medication, but I just need to try it for a month and see if it improves my bladder, because I can't go on the way I've been going. It's not pleasant. I mean, I'm not incontinent or anything like that, don't get me wrong, but just getting up all night. I had a bad night last night, but did I not say in my video when I was doing the dance, I had about 4 glasses of water, and I said, I'll be up all night, and sure enough I was. But I was, thirsty from the dance, and the energy that I build up makes me very thirsty. Usually when I go out dancing, I get a big glass of ice, but I've run out of ice in the house. I have to make some more. And the ice just sort of helps quell the heat that I build up in my body from the build up of energy, actually, more than the actual exercise itself. So next time I do a dance for you, YouTube, or for myself actually, but that I share with you on YouTube, I'll make sure I've got ice, because too much water, too much water. I paid for it last night, by the gods. Anyway, it's very, very difficult to live in this body more and more as I get older. But then it's always been difficult for me. It's really nothing new under the sun. And simultaneously with my health issues, struggling with the cumulative traumas and viciousness of other human beings and constant attacks, psychic, spiritual, mental, emotional, at times sexual, and physical, that I've survived, it's no wonder my body breaks down from time to time, and I have to kick it along and say, come on, you can do this, Tanya. You've survived much, much worse. But the bladder thing is, it's been a problem for quite some years now, and it's very, very debilitating. So that's why I sit around reading stories and try and enjoy every day, and just live each day as if it's my last, and wrest some kind of enjoyment out of it, because not being well and not being protected and supported in any real meaningful ways, just stirred up and teased along and played for a fool in recent months. Not kind and not necessary, but it is what it is. Let me just go back to that. You can tell I'm not well because I just drift off and move into segues. So no navigation lights, which should have been visible, nothing. The volume of noise indicated it was very low and visible, but then it suddenly cut out, not dying out gradually as a disappearing craft would have done, gone in a flash. The lights changed and Rick Appleyard pushed the pedals round. He turned left and carried on his way, wondering what had happened. The rational mind said it was an aircraft running up its engines at Bruff, just across the Humber, said Rick. The weather conditions had distorted the sound and the silence compounded it. But was that the answer? Or was it a phantom aircraft? Many people have both seen and heard phantom aircraft. So could that be the answer? Rick Appleyard was not a man to be easily frightened nor swayed into the supernatural, but this had clearly shaken him. It was the fear and the not knowing what it was that was frightening. He was an ex-soldier, having joined the Lincolnshire Regiment when he was 14 and a half. A mere boy. It's outrageous, isn't it? And saw service in Italy, fighting his way up from Taranto to Rome. He then took part in the invasion of Greece, where he was wounded in the battle for Athens against the rebel forces in the last 12 hours of the fighting. So, not a man to be easily frightened, but he was. I've got spirit behind me that it felt like they ran their hand across my back, like this way. not in a kind of a overly affectionate, just letting me know they're here. It's odd. Just keep abreast of that situation, shall we? I don't know who it is. One of the strangest stories in my files comes from Peter Crowson in Birmingham, and it shows that phantom aircraft are not just post-war. In early 1940, Peter Crowson was looking out of his bedroom window when suddenly he saw a German aircraft pass over his house, an incident he has never forgotten. It's getting very hot, very humid. I'm pretty sure that's the spirit, but I'll just close my windows and put the aircon on. More than one way to skin a pussycat, isn't it? The other day that some entity came, they made this area very, very cold, but it's heating up. In early 1940, Peter Crowson was looking out of his bedroom window when suddenly he saw a German aircraft pass over his house, an incident he has never forgotten. I even saw the pilot and all the crew, who were all waving to me, he said. 10 minutes later I saw a Spitfire, and I thought, how strange, for it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Were these ghost sightings, for no one else saw or heard them? In early January 1985, John Bell from Scunthorpe in Lincolnshire set out on his regular route from Scunthorpe via Caistor Top, Horncastle to Boston and return. As a bread delivery man, he did this run each day. On this particular day, he was in company with another of their vans. Be not afraid, I am here to support you. Sorry. Thank you, Spirit. But can you just pull back on your energy a little bit? I'm feeling a bit oppressed by you at my back. Just step back a little bit. I'd appreciate it if you did that. Thank you. And please don't interrupt my reading to the people of Earth, because, wow, they come to this channel, they see all sorts of strange occurrences. It's probably cost me my last friendship with a man, probably freaked him out too. It's how I lost my friendship with Rabbi Uri Tamal, actually, when I saw that vision of what was going to happen at the Moatzah meeting, and I naively told him what I saw. Freaked him out so much he distanced himself from me after that. It's not my fault that I'm a bit clairvoyant at times, or that I have now an older age frequent visitations from spirits. You didn't see me invite anything in, I'm just reading to you, minding my own business. So it's not malicious or done to attention seek or anything weird, it just randomly happens, and no harm and no foul really. Unless they oppress me, then I get annoyed. Right. As a bread delivery man, whoever they are, they're just standing at my back like they've got their hand not quite touching me now. They've honoured my request to not oppress me, but they're just holding energy at my back, kind of very calmly holding space for me, which is unusual but soothing, protective. After all, I don't have a partner or family, or don't see my few remnant friends very often, so I get protected by the spirit world now, and I'm grateful for that. On this particular day, he was in company with another of their vans, which was a short distance in front of him. They had just passed the main Louth to Market Racen, R-A-S-E-N, road, heading in the direction of Caistor, spelt C-A-I-S-T-O-R, Caistor, and was nearing the Binbrook Tilby crossroads, when suddenly they ran into a patch of mist. It was approximately 11:30 a.m, and even though it was early January, it was a lovely sunny morning, and John Bell was driving with his cab window down. From out of the mist came a Spitfire, he said. It had clipped wings, sort of grey colour, with no visible markings, such as roundels. It passed very low across my front in a banked turn. That was very strange, but stranger still, there was no sound. As John Bell recalls, I had my window down but never heard a sound. But he had clearly seen the phantom aircraft, and when he stopped, he asked the other driver if he had seen anything when they passed through the patch of mist. Yes, a grey aircraft that didn't make a sound, replied the other driver. Also very, very strange. More sightings of phantom aircraft. Was the mist the edge of the time zone? A glimpse into another world? You decide. Chapter 16. A Ghostly Reunion. In June 1970, Mrs. Sylvia Tucker decided to go to Lincoln for the day and spend a few hours looking round the old wartime airfield at Skellingthorpe, where she served during the war years as a nurse. Royal Air Force Skellingthorpe opened in October 1941 as a satellite bomber airfield for Swinderby and No. 5 Group Bomber Command. It was an airfield with very primitive facilities and was shut in on 3 sides by heavy woods. Just going to go and grab a glass of water. Sorry to interrupt my own reading to you, but my throat's closing up. Right, people of Earth, the Tanya, aka the Mama T, is back. Right, where were we? It was an airfield with very primitive facilities and was shut in on 3 sides by heavy woods. The first bomber squadron to use this primitive airfield was Number 50 Squadron, with their battle-worn Hampton bombers. The squadron then converted to the fateful Manchester in April 1942, and there was always very tight security around the troublesome bomber. Only half of the Manchesters were operational at any given time, and they rightly earned the nickname of the Flying Coffins. Many of the Manchester bombers burst into flames on takeoff, many times blowing up and killing all the crew. How horrific is that? They don't even get to fly over to Germany to bomb the shit out of Germany. They blow up just from takeoff. Dreadful. Well, good for the civilians. It's less bombings for them in Germany. So it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? But, you know, all that loss of life and waste of life and waste of machinery and resources. It's kind of insane, the whole thing, isn't it, when you think about it? More bomber crews died on takeoff in the Manchesters than were shot down. Because of the terrible slaughter, no one was allowed to mention the heavy losses caused by the deadly bomber. But good came out of bad. The Manchester had to be redesigned, and the Lancaster bomber was born. The airfield saw such tragedy during the war years, and the other main bomber squadron that it housed was Number 61, whose squadron badge was the Lincoln Imp. Flying Officer Leslie Manser gave RAF Skellingthorpe its only Victoria Cross of the war. He was awarded it posthumously after staying at the controls of his doomed bomber in order to give his crew time to bail out. What a dreadfully awful way to die, but what a heroic act, sacrificing his own self. He died when the badly damaged aircraft plunged to earth and blew up. Dreadful way to die, if you ask me too. The airfield closed in the early 1950s. For many people, it had been their home during those dark days of war. Romance blossomed and died in those dark days of war. Romance blossomed for Corporal Sylvia Tucker of the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, and she became engaged to Ken, but it never worked out for the beautiful young WAF corporal. But she did find true love at RAF Skellingthorpe and married a corporal from the fire section. The old airfield, therefore, held many memories for Sylvia Tucker, and, like a magnet, it drew her back. It was a beautiful sunny day as she alighted from the train at Lincoln Railway Station. It was going to be another hot day. The date, June 1970. Sylvia Tucker had paid many visits to other old airfields, but this was going to be quite different, as Sylvia says. When I got to Lincoln, I found that things had changed, and getting to the bus station was not quite so easy as it was in 1942. Having got the bus to Swanpool, I walked down to where the camp was. They had not built on it then, but they had plans to do so. They have also built a church on what we called the main runway. Pardon me. Sylvia felt back home in the old airfield and was soon happily clicking away with her camera at many of the old buildings. She took one which was still numbered for the dispersal. Without knowing it, she suddenly found herself walking slowly round the flight office and fire section. Suddenly I noticed how cold it was. And yet it was a very hot day, she said. I don't know what made me stand still. I was unable to move, and I was not on my own any more. As I stood there, someone just lightly tapped my shoulder. As I stood there, I heard the engines of the Lancasters and saw the activity of the armourers loading bombs. At the same time, a funeral procession was passing, which was for an armourer who had been killed while sitting in the bomb carrier which exploded. But no one took much notice. There was singing and whistling. I just nodded because they said quietly to me in my head while I'm reading to you, I am here, and I just nodded. I acknowledged that you're here, Spirit. Then out of it came Ken, who I was engaged to. I waved to him and kept calling him, but he did not answer, although he saw me. But I did hear someone speaking to me and felt a touch on my arm, and everywhere was back as quiet as before except for the birds singing and the workman who spoke to me. He said he had seen me acting very strange, waving my arms about, and I was sobbing with tears streaming down my face. Had Sylvia Tucker experienced a ghostly reunion? She had certainly stepped back in time and was very clear about what she had seen and heard. All in all, I was not very sensible, said Sylvia. But was that the right way to feel? The workman took her to his house and gave her a cup of tea. While she sipped her tea, he told her that he knew she was a stranger to the area. Otherwise, she would have known better than to go across the airfield on her own. He said he had seen her acting very strange, waving her arms about and shouting. He thought it was all so very strange and made his way over to her. But for Sylvia Tucker, it had been a ghostly reunion. I'll just show you these photos before we continue with the story. This one says, inside the old wartime control tower at the old Skellingthorpe airfield, photo taken by Sylvia Tucker during her visit. Sylvia Tucker on the right, 1985 at Waddington. The old fire section building at RAF Skellingthorpe where Sylvia Tucker stood in June 1970 and entered the time zone. I am not one to be imaginative, she said, but I can assure you it was real. Today, Sylvia Tucker is still married after 40 years. She has 3 children. Those 5 wartime years served in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force are etched firmly in her mind. She, like so many others, witnessed so much tragedy. But as a nurse, Sylvia was always regarded as a very cool person, not the sort of person to make up a ghostly reunion. A very level-headed person who certainly saw those earthbound spirits. As Sylvia Tucker says, I can't put into words what I felt that day. It's something I shall never forget. A glimpse into the past. Wartime photograph of RAF Skellingthorpe, the mighty Lancaster bomber and airmen. Is this what Sylvia Tucker saw? Did she unlock the time zone and step back in time? Chapter 17. The Headless Ghosts. Canon Finney, during the Ghost Watch program, said, an actual figure of a man wandering round the tower with his head under his arm is a very, very rare beast indeed. And to be frank, I've never come across anything of that kind. But many people have reported seeing headless ghosts. Are they all wrong? Even some American servicemen have claimed to have seen a headless ghost. Lakenheath Charlie, he is called. Over the years, there have been many tales of Lakenheath Charlie emerging from the American Air Force Base at RAF Lakenheath in Suffolk. Nearly all because the name mentioned Charlie, I keep flashing back to her death. It's upsetting. Although I must remind myself that it's merely a transition. She's in the light now. Still, it's upsetting to lose your pets, to lose the things that you love in this existence. Have to wait to rejoin them in the next existence, if we ever cross paths again. My little bird, my sweet little girl. Anyway, just slams me from time to time. The dreadful losses I've endured in the last 5 years. Let me repeat that sentence again. I got lost in the trauma space there. Over the years, there have been many tales of Lakenheath Charlie emerging from the American Air Force Base at RAF Lakenheath in Suffolk. Nearly all the hauntings are in the area around the notorious Tab V46 shelter, or mini hangar as it is sometimes called. Whatever it is called, it is a very haunted hangar and area. You get such a weird feeling when near Tab V46, said one security policeman. Another policeman on foot patrol reported seeing a misty figure. Could not make out the figure of a man, he said. Just a misty figure that was only body and legs. It was really weird and frightening. My sergeant saw it a few nights later, and he was as scared as anyone. When he saw the ghost, he was in red section and just behind the Tab V46 shelter. One night the lights were reported flashing on and off in Tab V46, and the security police quickly rushed to the shelter. When I got there, I thought I heard gunshots from inside the shelter, said a police sergeant. I then got the strange feeling that somebody was behind me. I turned sharply to see the strange ghostly figure, who disappeared when it got to within a few feet of me. I just cannot explain it. Many people think that Lakenheath Charlie is the ghost of an RAF pilot who crashed near the Tab V46 shelter during the last war. In the crash, the pilot was decapitated, and people say it is a ghost of the pilot looking for his head. True or false? One thing is certain. There have been many unexplained happenings in and around Tab V46. Tools have just disappeared, and items have been moved around as if by unseen hands. All so very strange. It was almost too much for me, said one maintenance man. On one occasion a mechanic was lying on the floor whilst working on the underside of an aircraft inside Tab V46. His companion was handing him tools from time to time as needed. The man helping was suddenly called away, and when he returned and apologised to the other mechanic for being away longer than expected, the other man was taken aback. He had not known that he had gone, for someone had continued to pass the tools. I love that when spirits actually assist and help out. That was kind of cute. Had no idea. So I like that story. If you're going to haunt someone, at least be a bit bloody useful. Like help out, but support, do kind things. Some spirits can produce physical phenomena like bunches of flowers, or at least a bloom, or sometimes diamond rings. Bing bam boom, baby. None of my spirits give me diamond rings. Guess they don't cherish me enough and don't value me enough. I guess they're just a bit cheap. Oh, smallest violin. If I worked hard enough and acquired my own wealth, I'd have my own diamond rings, wouldn't I? But ultimately you can't eat diamonds, and I'm only kind of joking about that. I don't hold that much faith in diamonds anymore. Probably hold their value a bit better than our current fiat currency though, but only if you have, very large carats of diamonds or gold. Gold is always good, people of Earth. You could drop me an ancient gold Roman coin or something. That'd blow everyone's minds. And somebody would probably assume that I've stolen it for my luck. Anyway, if things are meant to be, they come to you. Almost as if landing in your lap sometimes. Ask me how I know. Anyway, where were we? Many ghostly stories have filtered out from RAF Lakenheath, all very interesting, for I often paid visits to Lakenheath to compare security during my service days with the Royal Air Force Police. It was tight then for security. Now it seems that if there is any breach of security, or unexplained happening, they chalk up another for Lakenheath Charlie. From one headless ghost to another, this one has been seen very clearly to become known as the headless ghost of Snowdonia. But let us go back and start at the beginning. Over the years, the Snowdonia mountain range in North Wales has claimed many victims, many of these being through aircraft that came to grief in the mountains. During the war years there were many. One such incident occurred around 0300 hours on the 14th of April 1941, when a German aircraft crashed into the mountainside. A few hours earlier, the twin-engined Heinkel bomber, a HE-111 from the 1st Staffel of KG-28, had taken off from its base at Saint-Malo in France to attack the shipyards at Barrow in Furness. But the German bomber was not destined to return. Near the target area, the Heinkel was hit by AK fire. What do they mean by AK? AK-47s or something? I don't know. What's AK fire? I need to know, people. I need to know what AK fire is. It's going to grind my gears not knowing. AK commonly refers to the artillery fire of anti-aircraft warfare derived from the initials AA. AK may also refer to a horse, American Hall of Fame racehorse. Well, that's not what's meant here. What is AK in the military? An anti-aircraft gun or regiment, or anti-aircraft gunfire, a burst of AK fire. World War II, signaler's name for the letters AA. Right, so it's got nothing to do with an AK-47. But it's anti-aircraft, well maybe. It doesn't mention that. Doesn't mention that at all. Well, interesting. Then it was engaged by a night fighter, and during a hit-and-run chase, the Heinkel bomber received direct hits which knocked out the radio and compass. The German pilot had survived the Ack-Ack and the night fighter attack, but was now without radio and compass and still over England. He set course for home using the night sky and other landmarks available, but the pilot was miles off course and he was heading for disaster. At approximately 0300 hours, the German bomber hit the plateau on Lewidmore, I can't pronounce Welsh, above Aber Falls in Wales. Miraculously, all the crew, but for the flight engineer, survived the crash. In the impact, the flight engineer was decapitated. How fucking ghastly was that? This crash happened in the early days of the war when there were numerous crashes, many from Royal Air Force bombers returning shot up from missions, and many during training flights. Many of the aircraft that crashed in mountains and other open spaces were never recovered. Many were never found, not even to this day. They were listed as missing and are still missing. So where did they go? Did they just, when they exploded, just the whole thing just vaporized? That could be the only explanation. Or where did they really go, people of Earth? A few years ago, a party of aviation enthusiasts were climbing on Lewidmore when they came upon the wreckage. That might not be how it's pronounced, people. It's LLWDMOR. Just want to clarify it. I have no idea how to pronounce it. I'm just winging it like a vaporized aircraft. Doing the best I can. When they came upon the wreckage of the Heinkel bomber, being aviation enthusiasts, they realised the importance of their find and knew it was a World War II German aircraft. They immediately split up in order to examine the widely dispersed pieces of the wreckage, whilst the others set about a much wider search. One member of the party was left to examine the JUMO engines from the crashed bomber, JUMO. He was very excited and engrossed in his find. Then he became aware of a uniformed figure sitting on a nearby rock. He looked across at the ghostly figure. His blood ran cold when he saw what looked like a plastic bag or small sheet replacing the head. As a second member was returning, a voice was heard to say, "Don't frighten me." The apparition then disappeared. So, consciously communicating as well. It was later confirmed that the wreckage was indeed that of the German Heinkel bomber that had crashed on the Lewidmore in North Wales in 1941, decapitating the flight engineer. That explained the chilling appearance of the ghostly uniformed figure with a plastic bag or small sheet in place of the head, the headless ghost of Snowdonia. Right, people of Earth, I'm getting a bit tired, but might read 2 more chapters since they're only a few pages each, so I think we can push, push, push like the Mustang Quay. I truly am in my spirit. Return to Squire's Gate. My previous story, The Phantom of Squire's Gate, brought a flood of mail to inform me that it could not have been Neville Duke, who Miss Julia Wolfe Harlow had seen as an apparition. Mr. F.A.C. Roper from Weybridge in Surrey even took the time and trouble to send me a photocopy of the relevant page for Duke, Neville Frederick, from the current edition of Who's Who. Mr. Roper wrote, "You write about Miss Julia Wolfe Harlow, who claimed to have seen the ghost of Neville Duke. I enclose a page from the current Who's Who which may interest you. It was of great interest to me, for Neville is a very good friend." Let me just show you the photograph of him. Squadron Leader Neville Duke posing in his favourite seat, taken when Chief Test Pilot, taken when he was the Chief Test Pilot with Hawker Aircraft Limited. Squires Gate Airport, today known as Blackpool Airport, was always an unfortunate airfield and one of mystery. Amy Johnson took off from Squires Gate on 7th of January 1941, only to crash in the Thames estuary. Her body was never recovered and remains one of the mysteries of the Second World War. Throughout the war, Squires Gate housed many night fighter squadrons. Also, 2,500 Wellington bombers were built at the Shadow Factory on the edge of the airfield. There were many flying accidents, and many earthbound spirits remain. Miss Julia Wolfe Harlow was at Squires Gate Airfield in the 1950s as a trainee air hostess. Employed by Mr. Russell Wyam, one particular wet day, she was in the pleasure flight booking kiosk, a duty which she did when she was not in the air as a trainee hostess. And, because of the bad weather, business was not very brisk. Julia stood watching the rain pour down. Suddenly I turned and looked towards the door, she said. Standing against it, with his arms folded, I saw a young man who was staring straight ahead. "Hello, I didn't hear you come in," I said, but he didn't look at me. He was wearing some kind of light grey uniform, but no cap. But what was so strange was the fact that his clothing was quite dry. As I stared at him, suddenly recognizing him, he disappeared. So who had Julia seen? She thought no more about it until, during a conversation with her colleagues, she was prompted to mention the incident. Someone then told her that who she had recognised was none other than Neville Duke, the famous test pilot who had been killed a few weeks earlier. Now we know that it was not Neville Duke. So who was it that Julia saw? I did receive a few suggestions. Mr. E.T. Manby from Lincoln was one of the many who wrote to me, and he said, "In the Phantom of Squires Gate, you describe how Miss Wolfe Harlow recognised the figure of Neville Duke, who was killed about 2 weeks ago. I rather think she must have been mistaken, for in the late 1950s, Neville Duke, a near neighbour of mine at Dunsford, was very much alive. Could it have perhaps been John Derry, another very well-known test pilot, who I'm sure you well remember was killed when his aircraft broke up as it was turning behind the control tower during the 1952 Farnborough air display?" I then asked Julia if she could have been mistaken, for it could not have been Neville Duke. She replied, "As for your question, it was very definitely Neville Duke that I had seen." This was confirmed by quite a few of the staff who heard my description of the young man, and although we bought a daily newspaper, we did not see mention of his death 2 weeks back. At the same time, it is said, the phantoms of existing people can be seen when they are still alive. It's called bilocation, and my mother used to do it. She was a right royal bloody pest too, I might add. By the gods. So, I mean, you have to laugh, but it's actually kind of not funny. It's quite scary at the time. We were going through 2008, end of 2008. This was the second time that she'd bilocated. As I said in another video, she had no control over it. But by this stage, she was already in the high care facility, gaga, with Alzheimer's. So she really couldn't control it. And my daughter Crystal was sorting through, boxes of stuff we were sorting through to gather up any chattels or possessions that I was given permission to have in my possessionship and my care, as it were, because they knew I was going to be screwed over in that will dispute, let's face it. Evil bastards. The sheriffs I'm talking about, evil they were, filthy and evil. But anyway, but the public trustee had given me the keys to my mother's home, said gather up whatever you can or whatever you want, and we'll give you permission. So I had gone to get lunch, fish and chips. I'd taken Jared and the little doggy with me, and we went off to get fish and chips for all of us for our lunch. So I left Crystal in my mother's home to continue, looking through things and searching for things that were useful to us and that we wanted, because there was a lot of rubbish and junk and weird things my mother had ordered as well. And but anyway, so she said to me, I get a phone call on my mobile, Mummy, you need to come back to the house immediately. I said, I'm getting fish and chips. I can't come back immediately. She says, can you just come back as quickly as possible? And I could hear her real fear in her voice. I said, what on earth has happened? She said, I'm looking through the box looking for, sorting through stuff, Mummy. And I was singing because my daughter loves to sing. It's another attribute. My half-sister also constantly sings, and I've started singing a bit more in older age than I used to too. And but anyway, my daughter's always gustily singing along. She's a wonderful singer, my daughter. She's actually a very talented woman. So she said, I'm sorting through, and I was singing. I can't remember what it was she was singing. And she said, as clear as day, as though Ormi, that's German for grandmother, was standing right beside me, I heard Ormi call out, "Oh, that's so lovely, darling. Keep doing that." And because she looks around, because she knows that my mother's in the Alzheimer's ward. And she said, I got such a fright that she said, I'm just shaken with terror. She said, how is she doing this? I said, don't worry, we'll come back, we'll have lunch, and then we'll go. We'll all go in the car together. I'll take Jared with us because he was helping us sort through everything too. He's been a wonderful friend to me and helped me through all that horror and ignominy, by the way. And so I said, we'll go immediately to the Alzheimer's ward, which was Moreton Bay Nursing Care Unit in the secure ward. All three of us strutted up there immediately after we finished our lunch. I said, I know exactly how to fix the situation. It won't be happening again. Mind you, my mother's home was very haunted. We were all terrified to go upstairs to her previous old bedroom that she slept in for many years, but with Alzheimer's had moved down to the lower level. That was terrifying too. But anyway, we went to the nursing care unit and I strutted in and I said, went straight to my mother and sat down. I said, hi Mum. She's like, moaning because she couldn't really speak anymore, wasn't really verbal. This was a weird thing, like her brain was mush and she was not even barely verbal anymore, but she was still able to project her spirit like that. Quite astonishing. So I said to her, I just want you to know, Mum, I said, the public trustee have given me permission to take all your valuables and your chattels and your possessions, Mum. And then the weird thing, as soon as I said that, this light came on in her eyes of cognition, which she would sometimes flare up with cognition. It would be quite astonishing. She turned her head and looked at me. Oh yes, she said. Now bear in mind when I arrived she was like, it was odd, very odd. So I get this chill going through my body because I'm like, oh, she's there, she's in there today. So I said to her, I want to cry when I think Alzheimer's is such an awful, evil disease. It really is. And so I said to her, I don't want you to worry, Mum. I promise you. It's kind of a half a lie because I knew she wasn't coming back from where she was. I knew she was in the waiting room of death, right? It was only a matter of months or years. I knew she was never going to come out of that home again. But I wasn't going to tell her that. Can't take hope away from people, can you? Even your fucking rotten evil mother, by the gods. Anyway, so I just said to her, I don't want you to worry anymore about your stuff and the house and your things. The house is fine, it's all locked up, no one can go into it without keys and without permission. Yes, she said. And I said, and all your lovely things, I said, will be in my possession and I'm just looking after them for you. And she looked at me like real cognition, her eyes sparked up. And she looked at me and she said, verbally, completely lucidly, oh, thank you, I have been so worried. And I said, I understand, Mummy. but please don't send your spirit to the house again. Everything is okay. You can relax now. Everything's fine, and I'm going to look after everything for you. And she nodded, and I could see this weight fall off her, almost like a energy, almost like a cloak being dropped to the floor. Thank you, she said. And I looked at Crystal and Jared, and even they kind of freaked out and went. And I said, we're going home, we're going now, we've got lots to do, but everything's safe and everything's fine, and you must no longer worry. So don't come haunting again. Okay, my mother said. Well, she probably didn't understand what I was saying about the haunting part. Or maybe she did, because I don't believe she could control it, but maybe she did have that element of inside her own spirit of knowing that she was searching, making sure everything was being taken care of. That's what a materialist she was, but we're all materialists. We are, at the end of our lives. We acquire things and it's hard to let it go. Anyway, it's kind of funny, and funny, strange funny, not funny, ha-ha. So we all pulled back in my little car I had in those days, went back to the house, and Krista said, do you think she'll do that again? I don't think so, because she's got peace now, she knows that we're there for a reason. And but I said, the thing upstairs, that I don't know what that is, I think it's demonic. That I can't parlay or negotiate with my mother about, because I don't think she put that there. We all looked at each other. So it was a very weird experience, but it was how I knew, although I didn't experience Mum bilocating, but it was my daughter hearing her saying, oh, that's lovely singing, my darling, keep doing that. And I knew she had the history of bilocating before, because she'd done it to her friend David McSkimming, who complained about it to me and asked me to ask her to stop doing it. So that was 2 occasions that I know of, and who knows how many other times she might have bilocated to other family members or other family friends or acquaintances. Nothing, no one else complained or mentioned it, but doesn't mean she didn't do it. So there you go. So that's what they call that. The phantoms of existing people can be seen when they are still alive. So Julia is still adamant that it was indeed Neville Duke. It could not have been. So who was it she saw? He's wrong about that. Could easily have been Neville Duke, probably having a connection to that space and to the other airman that had perished, and might have been quite unconsciously placing himself in that situation too, spiritually speaking. I asked Neville Duke, and he said, rest assured, no harm done by premature announcement in your book. It has happened at least once before, in Australia. Neville then went on to say, I did visit Squires Gate a lot during my time as chief test pilot with Hawker Aircraft when they built a factory there for the production of Hunter aircraft. Looking through my logbooks, I started flying up there in April 1952 from Langley using the company Rapide, and made the first flight of a Squires Gate Hunter in May 1954. My visits went on until 1956. I did go into the air traffic building to book in and out, as was the practice in those days, and I think the Pleasure Flight kiosk was in that building. So he's saying he was actually physically there. So on the plus side, we know that Neville Duke did fly in and out of the Squires Gate Airport, and he would have to pass the Pleasure Flight kiosk. But gladly, in the flesh, I might add. I then asked Neville if it could have been who Mr. Manby suggested. John Derry was killed at Farnborough on 6th of September 1952. I am sure he had no connections with Squires Gate, he said. So we are back to square one. The mystery remains, and to give you food for thought, Squadron Leader Neville Duke, wartime pilot, Desert Air Force, holder of the World Speed Record 1946, World Records London to Rome 1949, London to Karachi 1949, London to Cairo 1950, World Speed Record September 1953, and Chief Test Pilot Hawker Aircraft said, "For what it's worth, I do have a habit of standing with my arms folded." Chapter 19. A Haunted Holiday. Many old-time airfields have been given a new lease of life, some of the lucky ones being used by flying clubs, thus able to continue in a flying role. Others were turned into a variety of uses, which include uses in the leisure industry. The domestic site of the old Royal Naval Air Station, St Mirren, HMS Vulture, has been converted into a holiday camp. One day a cleaning lady was working in one of the huts on the old airfield when suddenly she felt a presence and an urge to look around at the bed which was just behind her. She turned to see a pilot sitting on the bed. He was wearing a fur-lined leather jacket and similar style knee-length boots. He had in his hand a leather flying helmet. "I was petrified," said the cleaning lady, and she refused to work in that hut again. From 1978 to 1980, Squadron Leader Colin Pomeroy served as a flight commander on No. 42 Squadron at RAF St Morgan, flying Nimrod aircraft, and as St Morgan has only a few married quarters located within its confines, he lived in one of 5 ex-Royal Navy officers' quarters at the old RNAS St Mirren. During this period, he became very friendly with the members of the Padstow and/or Trevose Head lifeboat crew, and on one of his visits, the conversation turned to RNAS St Mirren and the haunted holiday hut. "One couldn't hope to meet a more down-to-earth and level-headed lady than the one to whom I was talking," he said. "She was quite emphatic, but, sorry, got that wrong. She was quite emphatic that there was one of the huts on the old airfield into which she could no longer enter." And Squadron Leader Pomeroy added, "I cannot, obviously, vouch for the accuracy of her story. I can, though, vouch for the sincere way in which it was told to me. From a haunted holiday hut to a haunted holiday cottage. And this one was so bad it made the Hodgkins family pack up and leave before their holiday had ended. This haunted holiday cottage was one on what was part of the old Holmesley airfield in Hampshire. The old airfield, known officially as Holmesley South, was not far from Christchurch and was very close to the New Forest. During the war years, it housed some Coastal Command squadrons and some Canadian fighter squadrons before being taken over by the Americans to become Station Number 455. American B-26 Marauders then operated from the airfield, which closed soon after the war ended. It had a brief hectic life, and after the war the bulk of the airfield was quickly reclaimed by the Forestry Commission. One section is now used as a public road, and some of the buildings at the edge of the airfield in the Forest Road area were turned into self-catering holiday cottages. One of those holiday cottages was called Heathfield Cottage in Forest Road, Holmesley, on the very edge of the wartime airfield. The cottage was isolated, and the remains of the wartime runway was only a few hundred yards away. In the summer of 1972, Mr. and Mrs. Hodgkins and their 2 children decided to again spend a holiday at Heathfield Cottage, but this time Mrs. Hodgkins took her parents along. My husband, myself, and our 2 young sons had for a couple of years spent a self-catering holiday at Heathfield Cottage in Hampshire. We loved every minute of our holiday, and nothing unusual happened, said Mrs. Eileen Hodgkins. So I'm trying not to laugh. Eileen Hodgkins at Heathfield Cottage in Hampshire, all the H's again, all the alliteration. But their 3rd holiday at the cottage was to be very different, as she explains. Something happened on that 3rd holiday that has made a lasting impression on me and is as vivid today as it was then. But what was that? Had the Hodgkins family unlocked the time zone? Not really. It started the day they arrived at the cottage. Eileen Hodgkins's mother said she was horrified by the feeling she experienced on entering the cottage. But she said nothing at the time, so as not to upset the holiday. Unbeknown also to any of us was the fact that my mother was sleeping on a bed previously unused by any of us, said Eileen. This turned out to be not a proper single bed, but an old-fashioned laying out board. Oh dear goddess. This was not discovered until the next day, she added. Oh, that just gives me chills, that does. Oh. Here's a photo of the haunted Heathfield Cottage. Posing for their holiday snap is young Richard and Trevor. Looks like a lovely little house, doesn't it? A little cottage. It started on their very first night and repeated every night the same pattern. But for Eileen and her husband, they were unaware of what was going on each night. They just knew it did not feel right, but thought no more about it, for they were on holiday, as Eileen explains. My husband and I were both awakened during the night by heavy footsteps going down the stairs, doors opening and closing, chairs being scraped on the kitchen floor, and the sound of china and cutlery. I am afraid my husband's reaction was, "Can't your parents go through the night without having to make a cup of tea and wake everybody up? Tell them we are on holiday and to enjoy themselves." The next day, Eileen found that her parents did not bring up the subject, so she thought it better not to say anything. She still decided to stay silent, even though the same thing happened night after night, much to the annoyance of Eileen and her husband. My mother used to get up at 3 o'clock, between 3 and 4 every morning, make a cup of tea and wake us all up when I was staying with her too. But she was literally doing that for real in physical form, like it wasn't a ghost, it was my mother, accustomed to waking up during the night so early because for years she worked as a cleaning contractor, and she and my father got in the habit of waking up at 3 in the morning. They both had that habit of being up incredibly early in the morning. It used to drive me nuts. But anyway, after a few days, Richard, who was 8 years old, the eldest of the two boys, started talking about the nice man in a leather jacket and goggles, and he said to my mother, "The nice man, Mummy, who comes and stands by my bed and smiles at me." It was only then that Eileen and her husband realised that there was some presence in the cottage, but not harmful in any way. Richard was not in the least distressed by the visits from the nice man in the leather jacket, said Eileen, but it did make us wonder what was going on. After a few days, my parents wanted to know why it was we could not sleep at night, and it was only then did we realise that all 4 of us were hearing exactly the same thing. And Eileen Hodgkins added, "My mother and I were both inclined to be fae, but I can assure you that both my father and husband are the most down-to-earth men you could meet, and before this, the pair of them would have scoffed at any suggestion of ghosts. I don't know about my father, but it shook my husband." The children took it all as part of the holiday and could not understand what all the fuss was about. To them it was a great adventure, but for their parents and grandparents, it was a nerve-shattering experience and very upsetting. The feeling in the cottage was one of despair and sadness, said Eileen Hodgkins. The only room you did not experience this was in the bathroom. The Hodgkins family was so distressed with it all, they cut short their holiday and returned home. It was just too much for them. It is difficult to say why it happened, and I can only suggest that they bordered on the edge of the time zone, but did not have the psychic power to enter. It is known that the only room in which they did not have a feeling of sadness was the bathroom. This room had been built on after the war and was not part of the original cottage. The cottage was on the very edge of the old wartime airfield, and during the war, It was used as a billet for the officers, so it had very strong wartime connections, which could well explain the apparition that visited young Richard's room. Royal Air Force, Canadian and American, were stationed at Holmesley South Airfield during these hectic war years. For many, it was their last place on earth. The Hodgkins family had been twice before to Heathfield Cottage for a holiday and had enjoyed themselves very much. They had not felt or heard anything unusual during their previous holidays at the cottage, but with hindsight, Mrs. Eileen Hodgkins did say, "We remember hearing what we took at the time to be a number of birds in the roof space, making a great deal of noise. That is probably all it was, but one can't help wondering after our third visit." The haunted holiday is a mystery, and it would be interesting to know if anyone else had experienced anything paranormal at Heathfield Cottage before or since the Hodgkins experience. For as Mrs. Eileen Hodgkins says, believe me, it is something none of us in the family will forget. Right, I think we'll stop there. We're up to chapter 20. We've got potentially 2 more videos worth to go. But I'm tired now, people of Earth, and I need to rest. So I should actually go for a lovely walk in the sunshine while we have sunshine for a change. I might actually do that. I need to rest, but it wouldn't hurt to walk in the sun and then rest. Or rest and then walk later. But if I rest and then walk later, it'll be later in the afternoon and the weather could turn. So I might actually go for a walk. It won't kill me. All puns aside. So take good care. Be of good cheer. Remember to never ever let the bastards grind you down, even if it happens to be a ghost. Just acknowledge their presence and wave them hello and goodbye. And most are not harmful. They just show their existence every now and then. Probably just for shits and giggles most of the time. Make you aware that they're still existing in another paradigm where most of the time they are free unless they're earthbound, which is not cool. And those earthbound spirits should be assisted or rescued into the light. It's just my opinion on that. I've had arguments with another medium who turned out to be quite a fascist, who didn't agree with that, but I think she's wrong. It's wrong to entrap any soul in any dimension where they no longer belong. They should be free to move freely and continue the evolution of their spirit as they go through the various different paradigms, physical and non-physical. It's very important to continuously grow and evolve, people of Earth. The time is now 1:01 p.m, so an 11 synchronicity. So if you feel so inspired, make a wish to the angels. You know what I wish for. Same old wish I've been wishing for 60 fucking years. But it could happen one day. Anyway, probably in the next life, if there is a life after this one. Anyway, I mustn't think about that. I have to focus on this life, getting through it and living my best life and taking joy and delight in what is left to me and what I can co-create with the gods, am I right? So, blessed be from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. Have a beautiful day wherever you are in the space-time continuum. Shalom.